Today's guest is Everett Sorensen of Evergreen Engineering Services. And a lot of the questions that we're going to ask him are also being answered on the environmental health website. And I'll include that in the video here. You can go to their frequently asked questions and see if your question is on there. But we hope to get to a lot of the common questions today. So Everett, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll get going.
Okay, I'm a civil engineer licensed in Washington, and I've been practicing in Jefferson County for about 13 years. I work on just about anything related to water, stormwater management, septic system design, and city infrastructure expansion, including water mains and such. Stormwater management is important because we don't want to have stormwater flowing off of a site and leaching driveway contaminants and transporting them to a natural receiving water. Stormwater management is a lot more important in Seattle and in Kitsap County, where there's a lot of urban areas that have runoff encountering enclosed waterways, whether it's lakes or Elliott Bay down in Puget Sound, which is kind of a extremity in Puget Sound. Jefferson County isn't quite the same situation. We don't have near the density that those other counties have, and the Salish Sea out here is not very confined. So a lot of agitation, oxygenation, dilution, these factors that minimize the impact of stormwater runoff. Nevertheless, in Jefferson County, we follow the Washington Department of Ecology Stormwater Management Manual for Western Washington, which is an extremely cumbersome guidance manual, 1,100 pages or so. It dwarfs the septic code by more than 10 times. And I get all kinds of complaints about it being overly complex, and I agree, it really is. Stormwater management shouldn't be so difficult. But fortunately, there are some easy solutions. For example, if you have vegetated ground surfaces, you can discharge stormwater to those surfaces, and they have to meet certain dimension requirements. But that's a natural way to treat your stormwater through a vegetated surface. So if it does carry any impurities typically picked up on driveways, for example.
And that looks like a rain garden, right?
Well, rain gardens are a good example of that.
Okay.
That's a vegetated containment that you fill up during a rain event, and then it slowly leaches into the ground. But the first thing I look at when someone asks me to help them with stormwater management, I look for vegetated flow paths that are 50 feet long. If you can provide a 50-foot long vegetated flow path within a private parcel, then you can discharge roof downspouts to that, and the county will be satisfied with that. City and county will be satisfied. When we don't have 50 feet available, that's when we want to try to infiltrate it in either a dry well or an infiltration bed or an infiltration trench. And that's not so much for treatment, that's simply to just get the groundwater, to get the stormwater into the ground so it doesn't flow off the site. So stormwater sizing depends on contributing area and soil type. If you have, we're not looking so much for treatment, so the idea is simply to get it to soak into the ground. If you have coarser, more permeable materials, then you don't need to provide as much area in those dry wells or infiltration beds.
And are those questions anytime someone wants to develop a piece of land?
Yeah, if whenever you're building structures in the county or the city, you have to manage your stormwater. It doesn't have to be complex, and like I said, if you can show 50 feet of flow path, you're finished. You don't need to have an engineer involved if you have less than 40% impervious coverage, which is much more achievable on a large parcel out in the county. In the city, when with the smaller parcels, we frequently exceed the 40% impervious coverage. They want an engineer to weigh in on it, and typically when we're building to such density, we don't have 50-foot vegetative flow paths because there's not enough room. So that's when we start putting in dry wells or infiltration beds. And sometimes people want to have a rainwater catchment between their downspouts and the dry well, so that they have, a couple barrels full of water that they can use for gardening. Because one of the disadvantages of infiltrating into the ground, it doesn't water your gardens that way. So dispersing stormwater flow from downspouts, roof downspouts, to gardens is a great idea. And your garden can count as a vegetative flow surface.
Nice.
Swales are common. If you look at the stormwater manual, they're called, I think they call them bioinfiltration cells or some fancy name like that. A slang would be called swales, and in the old days, they just call them ditches. And our Port Townsend Uptown, if you look around, some of those streets, residential streets, have old-fashioned ditches. And they're really fine for stormwater management. They serve to infiltrate at the point where the water is, but if there's too much, it flows down to the next, follows the path of least resistance. There are a few creeks flowing from Port Townsend, but they don't really flow except during rain events. A homeowner cannot design their own septic system. That's unfortunate because they might be capable of it, but without a license, they can't do it. You need to have a licensed on-site sewage system designer. Or in my case, I'm a professional engineer with wastewater treatment expertise. So there are professional engineers that don't have the right skill set and they aren't actually qualified. But if you're in wastewater treatment and you're a licensed engineer, you can do septic design. So, but a homeowner can install their own septic system. Normally, a septic system must be installed by a county licensed installer. And there's a list available on the county environmental health website. But this is a little bit of a hurdle. This is quite a bit of a hurdle because, for one thing, they're all pretty busy right now with the building boom that's going on. And so you have to get on someone's list and so on. But you can do it yourself. Now, there's a concern that a homeowner may not really know all of the ins and outs of septic system installation. So I usually caution people to only take that on if they're confident that they can either figure it out or they have people they can reach out to, that kind of thing. Or if they have experience doing excavations, I think that probably helps too. But that's one advantage sometimes to people, is that they can install their own system.